Perfect support, Knut.
And this is session 14. We're in room 2. Chair is now me, Knut, and we'll go in that order.
We will.
Which means you, Jamie, is going to present Ways of Knowing Wakehurst. I'm looking forward to this. We discussed this.
Yeah. Could you also just time me for the 8 minutes and let me know? Yeah, maybe let me know at 7 minutes. Yeah.
Thanks.
So I don't overrun. Yeah, great. Thank you. I'm going to start with a prologue, which is the same as the abstract, which I put into the program, and then go from there. Early morning, and the sun has not yet risen high enough in the sky to break through either the tree canopy at the edge of the wood or the tangled undergrowth bordering the ancient meadow. The air sits cool, damp, and heavy, cold-blooded bodies. We warm-blooded ones approach as silently as our clumsy bipedalism allows. We are looking for the legless one, the one that slides through roots and bases of plants, that hides beneath leaves, searching out warm pockets of air. Warm pockets of air within which to wrap myself. Pockets of warmth that eventually soak inwards, enlivening my muscles, easing them, loosening them, so that when a rock is lifted and the dark shelter under which I hide is suddenly gone, my body is alive. I slither away. I am a dart in the undergrowth. We warm-bloodeds peer in, left with just the flick of a tail. One space, different lens. One moment, different rhythms. One place, different worlds. Where might such ephemeral encounters lead? And how might we wrap ourselves into the bodies of others, that this world might appear to us anew, known as it is from a different place? For this place is multiple, and the bodies that live here are many. This description describes a brief encounter with a grass snake on the edge of, in a little corner of a place called Wakehurst, which is in West Sussex, and is a large kind of country estate with 535 acres of biodiverse landscape, and an Elizabethan mansion in the midst of the grounds. Just flick forwards. And it's part of a project that I'm involved in called Wakehurst, Ways of Knowing. The grounds itself, both the Elizabethan manor and the large area that it sits within, is owned by the National Trust, and it's managed by the Royal Botanic Gardens in Kew. And it has a long history. So Wakehurst, as a kind of named place of Wakehurst, goes back about 1,000 years. But more recently, it's begun to be conceptualized, particularly through their involvement with Kew Gardens, as a centre of science. So in May of 2023, a year ago, Wakehurst invited anybody from the University of Sussex, where I work, who is interested in collaborating in research up there, to go and to be shown around Wakehurst. And they hosted us at Millennium Seed Bank, where they house seeds from all over the world. And it's, apart from the Norwegian one, it's one of the biggest in the world. And it's a very impressive kind of place. And the day that they hosted us was also incredibly impressive in terms of demonstrating what they do with the seeds, as well as talking about what they're doing within this landscape of Wakehurst itself. They've got more than 600 scientists working as part of Kew, and many of them are based at Wakehurst. And the narrative of the day that they introduced us into was very scientific in nature. In fact, over the last couple of years, they've begun to conceptualize Wakehurst itself as a living laboratory. As a social scientist, as someone with a social anthropological background, I thought this was quite interesting in terms of the way that a land environment be conceptualized and kind of known in this kind of way. And that knowing involves lots of different, so they've got quite a large ecology team who have implanted various kind of technologies for the landscape. Here you see an area called the wet woodlands, where there's a device which is placed within that is measuring the exchange. What is obscured by the scientific narrative? What is left out? And what are the other ways in which the environment or a place might be known? I began to weave together a project which would conceptualize or explore the different ways in which Wakehurst might be known. So there are foundational kind of assumptions to the project, and these are basically them. That there are different ways in which an environment, there are different ways of knowing a place or environment, and that these ways of knowing are constituted through complex entanglements of bodied perceptions, practices, tools, technologies, techniques, discourses, and more. And that these diverse ways of knowing each have value and can be observed, investigated, and described, unveiling what they entail and how they manifest. And what I've tried to do with these particular kind of descriptions of ways of knowing is that they can apply both to the human world and to the more than human world. So sort of shadowing back to my first description of the grass snake, I'm interested to know how other bodied beings, both animals and plants and fungi, might also know this landscape of Wakehurst in particular ways. The initial pilot project that I've been involved with for the last 3 months has focused more on human ways of knowing. So I've worked with people doing biological recording, survey groups, doing surveys for bats, bees, not all of the, I'm trying to think of another thing beginning with B, but wasps, badgers, as well as the ecology team doing what they're doing. I've been working alongside artists who have been installing artistic installations into the landscape and exploring their artistic ways of knowing. And then I have yet to participate in a meadow bathing group that explores more Japanese-inspired kind of meditative bathing within the landscape as a different way of knowing. But within each of these, sorry, and I will wrap up now because I've been given time, all of these foreshadow the more than human ways of knowing that I'm interested in exploring. And what I want to do out of the project so far is to develop a podcast where I can share these different ways of knowing, bring them into conversation with each other, and introduce the more than human aspect. And also the podcast is going to be a kind of exploration of how we might do that as well, how we might access the perspectives of animals and plants and fungi as well. Thank you.
Yep.
Trude Klevan, University of Norway, friend and colleague. You're going to present the presence of a beating heart.
Thank you. The presence of a beating heart. I wake up suddenly from a restless sleep and jerk upright. My husband is sleeping next to me. Is he breathing? He is. Breathing means that his heart is still beating. The human heart has one job: to beat. Beat life into our bodies and minds. It is as simple as that. The heart is where life is. Few days earlier, my husband had been diagnosed with a serious heart failure, dilated cardiomyopathy. In everyday language, that means that the heart is enlarged. In fiction literature or in everyday life, to have a big heart is a positive thing. It is connected to kindness, generosity, and warmth. While all these characteristics can be used to describe my husband, having a big heart in medical terms is definitely not good. The diagnosis came as a bit of a shock, from healthy and fit to possibly fragile in a split second. An enlarged heart can fail, and a failing heart runs the risk of suddenly stopping, of not being able to do the one job that it is assigned to do. Often in human life, there is a rather tightly shut drape between life and death, between being here and not being here, between presence and absence. Suddenly, that drape had been slightly opened, allowing for an air of uncertainty to enter our lives. More assessments and medical checks were waiting. We didn't know what this actually meant. It was a state of limbo, of insecurity and worry, of searching for information and understanding, of gaining insight and prognosis and possible futures. However, during that moment, in the middle of the night, listening for breath and heartbeats, meaning seemed to be subordinate. The middle of the night can be a time of loneliness. When the rest of the world sleeps, we are small and vulnerable, and the silence and darkness is vast, almost impenetrable. But even in this silence and in the absence of light, sounds and movement are present. Sounds and movements that connect us to life. The breathing of my husband is a lifeline for him, for me, for what is the unity of us as a couple and us as a family. I hold on to breathing, listening to it, focusing on it. His breathing, my breathing, the rhythm and speed. They are not in sync. His is a bit uneasy or maybe even staccato, alternating between ease and unease, as if struggling to find an even rhythm. Mine seems to lack depth, only taking place from the top of my chest and up, even but short. What am I thinking? Not much, I suspect. I just need to hold on to that lifeline, a lifeline that tells me he is still here, that I am here, that I'm not alone, that we are here, both of us. I focus on my own breathing, breathing in, breathing out. My breath is something I can control. I need to be here. I need to focus to avoid being captured by fear and uncertainty by that big night. Breathing, his and mine, serve as an anchor, hindering me in drifting away into the unpredictable waters of brooding. Focusing on breathing serves the purpose of making other issues become dimmer, disappearing from sight and conscience. Breathing serves as an act of presence, an act of connecting, of focusing, of being a body in the night, a body that is alive and present. Breathe in, breathe out. In the series of novels entitled My Struggle by the Norwegian author Knausgård, a recurrent theme and storyline is the importance of focusing your gaze. We need to focus on what means the most to us. Yet, it is not enough to focus your gaze on what you see and do. You must also acknowledge how you are attached to what you see. Through the struggling to focus, the small and seemingly banal details of life can provide us with attachment. In the night, my focus on breathing and heartbeats provides the attachment that I need. What does breath and heartbeats mean? In the middle of the night, the concept of meaning cannot really convey what the presence of breath and heartbeat involve. In my work life, as a qualitative researcher in the field of mental health, I'm often used to focus on meaning. In a hermeneutic interpretive tradition, the world can't just be. It is interpreted and constructed, filled with possible meaning. Being is always filled with becoming, with movement, possibilities, and context that involve some kind of ongoing construction. But is the meaning and the stories we construct and live by more true and more real than, for instance, goosebumps, the grasping for air, tears, or laughter? According to the German philosopher Hans Ulrich Gumbrecht, focusing on presence can provide us with attachment. Presence is something tangible that has an impact on our body and senses, and with which we can have a relationship. Presence is not only related to time, but according to Gumbrecht, presence is also very much spatial. And thus, presence is embodied, it is related to being here. We can experience a being in the world that interpretations and an ever ongoing search for meaning may fail to convey. Presence is connected to the material world. Through an interplay between the material world and our being in the world, presence is produced. With a focus on presence, Gumbrecht makes a critique of what he calls cultures of meaning and explores the importance of focusing on the things of the world, regardless of their meanings. For instance, seeing and sensing beautiful scenery can bring tears to your eyes. Encountering a deer in the woods may find you grasping for air. Hearing music or the trills of a bird can give your skin goosebumps. The reactions are immediate. They are bodily responses that do not have to do with what we think the music or scenery means. They are reactions that stimulate our senses and that trick our inclination to want to understand, to interpret. Sometimes things are not why and how, they just are. Breath and heartbeats are in some ways tangible. They can be heard and felt. If I start searching for meaning about how I can or should interpret what my connecting to breath and heartbeat may all mean, I will no longer be present in time and space. My breath may go out of rhythm, my thoughts may start drifting. In the night, a before interpreted way of being in the world is a way of being and relating. Breathe in, breathe out. Spaces and places for breathing, for presence are crucial to thriving. If you are attentive, places and spaces that may contribute to the production of presence may be encountered anywhere. The Norwegian poet Hans Børli found presence in his encounters with nature. I can relate to that. When walking in nature, in my favorite mountain area, for instance, I am a body in nature. My breath and walking pace unite with the wind, with the raw smell of the marsh, the sorrowful and monotonous sound of the golden plover, with the cotton grass blowing gently. Part of Børli's poem, Wind in the Cotton Grass, goes something like this in English. This is my translation. Life isn't always an exhilarating race with death. Life is not just 10,000 strenuous steps towards small goals. No, life is rich enough to be just wind in the cotton grass. Breathe in, breathe out. Air in, air out. Present tense and present bodies. Gentle wind through cotton grass. In every breath and every heartbeat, there is presence. We are still here.
Rosalind, Ridout, is that close to, okay, thank you. This title got me intrigued even before I knew I was chairing, but Becoming Bird, an extended understanding of self through Dalcroze Eurhythmics. Looking forward to this.
Hi everyone, I am a PhD student just over halfway through my part-time journey and today I'd like to share a bit about where I'm at with that. My research focuses on Dalcroze Eurhythmics. We heard a little bit yesterday about Dalcroze. It's an approach to music education that uses movement in space and in social relationship. I'm really interested in how I can include the more than human world within my teaching, hoping to cultivate nature connection and the skills and the values required to look after our planet and ultimately work towards against climate change. My practice as a teacher includes working in a school. I teach children ages 3 to 11 and also working in a junior conservatoire in London on Saturdays. So the story I'd like to tell today begins on a Friday evening before my Saturday teaching. I'm in the woods near my home. This place is not just for inspiration, it's my guide. It's near the end of this late April day and the birds are making the most of the remaining daylight. The trees are alive with their song. I identify the sounds I hear. I hear the chiff-chaffs whose arrival we celebrated a few weeks previously, the jay whose plumage matches this pinkening sky, and the blackbird who sits in his high perch each evening to sing his song. I start reconsidering my planning for the next day, wanting to bring this place and its richness of sensory stimulation to my classroom. There is so much to learn here. How can I bring the music of the birds to the children instead of my usual piano music? Quickly, my plan adapts to incorporate the music and the character of the birds in this forest orchestra. Saturday. As I wait for my class of children, these children ages 9 to 11, I walk through the boomy hall to my laptop, press play. The sound system's crackles give way to birdsong. I sit on the floor and I wait for the children. One child enters quickly, excitedly as ever, and quickly paces towards me. But he stops halfway, looking around and up. He shakes his head and smiles with faint embarrassment. He tells me he thought he heard birds, but it must be something else. I say nothing as he sits down next to me, but I model his looking around. Confusion meets wonder in his face. He realizes we are surrounded by birdsong. Together we listen. Together we marvel. I understand my students' surprise. They're entering into an indoor learning space so detached, so dissociated from the wonders of what lies outdoors, from the trees that give us our breath. The expectation is that this hall is for human activity. The walls are white and clear. The floor is shiny, swept clean. There are no windows, necessitating these horrible strip lighting. Like many learning environments, this place suggests that any potential distractions, the dust, the dirt, the sound, the sunlight, the fluctuating temperature, should all be neutralized. Meanwhile, the piano in the corner awaits my human touch, or my laptop, ready to play an infinite number of recordings. Dalcroze classes usually focus on human-made music, expressed through our human bodies, played through human-made technologies, filling a human-made space. But today, we hear birdsong. Music is considered to be something so deeply human. Music education celebrates this. I learned not only of music's aesthetic value, its beauty, but that it tells of society, of identity. It makes us cultured. I learned that music was separate to my other studies. Sadly, I perpetuate this fragmented view, this fragmented mindset now as I'm a specialist music teacher. I worry about this cutting up of different disciplines when we are in a world where everything is connected. Through education, we learn what is and what is not important. We learn about the important sounds and not about those that aren't. The non-human world offers soundscapes, offers intricacies of melodies, of rhythm, but my music education focused only on human-made sounds. Should we value only the human-made sounds? What effect does that have on us? Tonya Smith has described her own trauma of separation from the earth as she learned to redirect her thrill of those soundscapes she heard as a child to the school bell, to the orchestra, to human sounds only. But all education is environmental education. Subconscious elements of an education inform and structure students' worldviews. As we face these climate and ecological emergencies, restoring the non-human voices in our narratives works to alter our ontology. Without this change, I don't believe that we will have any success in this music, as we do with music. Since last night, I've developed these bird motifs I heard to lock melodically and rhythmically. I watched the class of the landscape and how they both depend and support on those around. Through body and through music, we experience their interrelatedness. Through our bird body and through bird music, we experience our dynamic, shifting identities. We experience becoming bird. As I reflected on this experience, I knew how important it was to get out into the natural world. We have really nice grounds, and so I've taken some of my teaching outside there where I can with my flute, with my birdie flute, to find other ways of being. And I'm just going to finish with a short poem about swallows. Swallows are magical. I love swallows for everything they represent. And I made them all little willow swallows, and so we were playing with them. And we were moving as swallows, and we were swifting and soaring all around. Music. But I pause and I feel the breeze against my skin, the fresh airs. I hear the music inviting me to move. My limbs begin to sway, turning and twirling. I swoop as if guided now by the faintest slither of swallowtail. Pelvis freely swinging with the bend of each leg. Spine supporting and strong, but agile in response to each shift of weight. Shoulder blades murmurating against the flesh of my back. Wings cutting through the air around. With the group, I dance. We interweave with each other, rising and falling. With the momentum and freedom of movement, I feel my ego melt away. I am movement. I am your movement. I'm our movement. You become me becomes we. Together, we become bird.
Thank you. Okay, would it be okay if the three of you sat down? And I see we have some, well, you are sitting, but over here. So for, okay, yeah, perfect, thanks. There seems to be a technological issue, but we'll, okay, yeah. Yeah. And
we do have a question online.
you do?
Yes.
Perfect.
So he can't hear me, so you'll need to tell him on the microphone that you can speak. He's online, so.
Okay, the one online, is Alec. Hi, Alec. You have a question.
Yeah, this is a quick. First of all, there were fascinating presentations. Thank you, all three of you, Jamie, Trude, and Rosalind.
Alec.
What?
Alec. Well, it seems there's an issue with the sound, so it was destruct. We couldn't hear what you were saying. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
It's better, I think.
Can you hear me? Is that better?
Yep.
Right. This is a question for all three of you, Jamie, Trude, and Rosalind. Given that traditionally autoethnography has been predicated on the relationship between self, culture, and analysis, I'm thinking about the self bit mainly. What do you see as the philosophical implications for the development of autoethnography, or even the undermining of the traditional basis of autoethnography? I hope that's, you can understand my question. Now I can't hear
We'll
you.
blame it partly on the sound, but I got the most important parts of it. What philosophical implications? Could you repeat?
Yeah, what do you see as the
The
philosophical?
philosophical implications of the kinds of things.
Now I can't hear you.
I think we lost you completely.
Can you hear me now? If anyone can hear me, I can't hear anything now.
Apparently, they're gone.
We can hear you, Alec, but yeah,
They can't hear me.
no.
Perfect.
Oh,
I
And now
sent you,
it's just us.
I sent you that paper, by the way, Annalise.
You're an absolute star. Thank you so much, Alec.
God.
Okay. I'm sorry for laughing, but now the internet seems to have taken over. Yeah. So you didn't hear what Rosalind was saying? Is that okay? Now, Jess.
I don't know who heard my question, and I didn't hear any response. That's my position.
Well, we heard your question, Alec, and I have to say I'm very glad that I didn't have to answer it because I'm not sure that I'd be able to yet.
That's okay. Thanks, Annalise. Yeah, that's
But I've written it down so I can go away and find an answer in case I present next year and you ask me the same question.
all right. That's good. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, the people in the physical room are all muted, I think. I can't hear them. Someone's just posted.
They should be able to hear me now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, I was just saying, Alec, that I've been working with and playing with an idea of autoethnography based on the the ethno, and the graphy, but kind of using that in my own kind of way. And the graphy being a kind of trace that you leave, like you leave some kind of trace of your research, you trace of your exploration of something.
Okay.
And the auto and the ethno being this kind of a trace of the engagement between the auto and the other, using the ethno as a kind of other in one sense. So the self and the other, and of the graphy, the material traces that you leave of that kind of encounter. And then when you extend that, I mean, I think that's what we're trying to do. A lot of our research anyway is try to, understand how we can resonate with the lives of others through that resonance that we find, with our own experience and our own lives. But then what happens when we extend that beyond the human, and we seek to understand that other who is a more than human other?
Yeah.
And so I think that's the kind of, I don't know what the philosophical implications of that are, but I think it's something along those kind of lines for me. I don't know.
That's great. Can I
I
just
have the answer.
no, I can't hear you.
What's that? And we can't hear you, I think.
Can-
I'm sorry about this.
Can you hear me now?
Okay. We'll let, yep. I'm not sure if you.
If you think about culture as more or less everything surrounding us, affecting us, and that we are affecting back, I think we also need to look into the more than human world and the natural world, and start to communicate with it.
Yeah, I heard that
In a
bit.
way. So yeah, so I think I think also art ethnographers, we kind of need to take responsibility for and not put human on top. You know, we are just part of something bigger than us. So it's I think it's useful to kind of expand what art can be. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think that's why we need to lose the idea of the self in favor of personhood. If you think in terms of personhood, I'm thinking about J.L. Garfield's work here. You think beyond the human. You think of all sentient beings and perhaps more than sentient beings. You know, thinking panpsychically as having the status of personhood. So the self is a dodgy concept philosophically and metaphysically. So yeah, I don't know if you heard that, but
We did. Thank you. And we have a question in the room.
This is a question for Jamie. You talked about how you want to move on next at Wakehurst to hearing from the animals and the fungi. And I just wondered how you're going to do that, if you know yet.
Yeah, I wondered about that.
Another really difficult question. Okay, so interestingly, I think I've already started to do that. So, for instance, with the group of biological recorders that I was spending time with, okay, I spent a day with a guy finding these little micro bees, these little solitary bees around in the meadows, and he was incredible at finding these things. But the reason he was so good is that he understood the bodied experience of the bee, and he understood, you know, and so he was employing a kind of phenomenological sensitivity to the body of the other. Okay, I mean, just like Rosalind was doing in the poem at the end there, where in a sense you're overlapping, you're kind of, you know, going back and forth between your own bodied experience and this other body being. And so he was appreciating how, you know, bees need a certain temperature before they can move, and they can sort of, you know, begin to, and they gravitate towards certain warm areas and things like that. So completely the experience ourselves in that process. And what I want to do is bring different people in. Rosalind, you'd be very welcome to come on my podcast and you know, just to say, like, how do we do this? I think that's part of the interesting thing. So
can I add to that as well? Like when I was researching kind of birding, I kind of had this idea that birding was, you go and tick a box and you find the birds and you write a really long list and see how many birds you can. And then I started reading a bit more about, and so much of it is you have to, it's about being in place. Ultimately, it's about knowing the like circadian rhythms of the birds and what they do, and so kind of that's what I find it.
Phenomenologically, like, how do you experience the body of another? And I've been thinking a lot about, you know, when you see someone else experience pain, like, where do you experience that pain? If you have empathy with that person, you flinch, but you don't experience pain in your own body. You experience pain in the other person's body, phenomenologically. I mean, I know kind of if we think biomedically, that doesn't make sense, but you don't locate your pain in your own body. You feel something out there. And I'm interested in that in terms of how that then relates to kind of getting into the body of another, as it were. Yeah, good question.
Yeah, we have one more question in the room. I think I forgot your name. Bethan. Well, he says you can go first, so we'll do that. Yep.
Well, I just wanted to thank you three. Was very, very rich and full of resonances, each one of you. And expanding on Alex's question to Ros, I think there's a general excitement about the possibilities where autoethnography can go. But I'm super excited as a Dalcroze Eurhythmician of the potential where Dalcroze pedagogy is going to go. I feel really moved, actually. So, and it's lovely. Sorry, didn't expect that to come, but it's lovely to see how you've developed. And I think there's a lot to discuss over coffee. And also, I loved, Trude, what you said, that we don't always have to have a why. We just are. And there's so much that goes into having to justify why I choose this or that. And yes, of course, if we're getting things published and passing exams and we have to have all that sorted out, but meaning, we sense meaning and we can know meaning in our bodies. And I think that's whatever body, yeah. So I think I have a lot to process, but I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if we're online at all at this point, but I think I just wanted to comment. I think all of these three presentations had to do with some kind of presence. And I enjoyed Ken Gale's madness as methodology. I don't know if because that kind of expands the eye in autoethnography as well. That might be. But Tim, I think you'll be the last questionnaire. Is that okay?
Okay, yeah, is it a question? Is it a comment? Is it a brain fart? I don't know. I kind of hope it is a brain fart because that's, I think, what's missing. And what's happened in this room for me is it's taken what I was becoming quite almost frustrated with autoethnography a point about a year ago, because of the theoretical machinery that seemed to be dominating everything. And this room sort of given me a bit of a boost, you know, and that and you yesterday and me yesterday and other people making wonderful sounds and Bryant this morning. It reminded me that this is a movable feast, and it's something that is felt. Yes, it's a presence. Trude, it's like you've launched something. I don't know what it is yet, but something to follow. And I'm very interested in that. Is this the point where ontology makes a comeback in autoethnography? I think that's what I'm asking. but also wary of using the word ontology because then it puts all those people back in the middle.
Thanks. We have time for more questions or comment, I think. If there are any. Yeah, please.
I think it's interesting between the three presentations that there's an interest in this kind of aspect of experience, which is beneath or beyond language or pre-linguistic or is part of this, you know, and there's that kind of bringing that back in to what we're doing as well. So I was definitely picking that up in your presentation, Trude, that yeah, what is it that is beyond meaning, but that we all share and that we somehow resonate with? And as we know from how we experience this conference itself, there's so much of that going on, you know, that kind of resonance in a sense that why, you know, why we're moved in this kind of context, but not perhaps in other academic contexts. You know, it's because we're tapping into those sort of, you know, pre-linguistic, pre-meaning sort of realms, I think. Yeah, I don't know if you want to.
No, I just think that Tim had a great book title there, The Return of Ontology. Oh, that will be a bestseller. I mean, really. So, yeah.
I'd buy that. Apologies for the technological issues on behalf of the committee, which I'm not part of. But thank you for a great session. And if you can hear us, it's a black screen here now, I'm not sure, but let's give them a last hand.